Imagine stumbling into a place that leaves no physical mark on your body. No bruises, no scars, but slowly drains your will, steals your sense of purpose, and eats away at your very character. These places aren't locations on a map. They're spiritual traps, mental prisons, emotional quicksand. They lure you in by offering comfort, praise, or the illusion of power. But beneath that pleasant veneer, they sap your strength until you wake one day feeling empty, powerless, and confused. Today we're going to speak plainly. There are 5 dangerous places you must avoid at all costs. I say places in quotation marks because none of these is a physical venue. They're states of mind, communities, or patterns of thought. They won't break your bones, but they will rot the foundation of your character. If you're serious about living with integrity, purpose, and inner freedom, you need to recognize these traps, steer clear of them, and teach yourself day by day to stay alert. So let's dive in. 1. The place where everyone seeks validation. First on our list is the world of validation, seeking the endless chase for approval, applause, likes, retweets, claps, whatever form it takes. Picture it, you're in a roaring stadium filled with people demanding your attention. You shout jokes, perform stunts, post your thoughts on every platform, all in the hope that someone will notice you, praise you, affirm your worth. But the more you crave that applause, the more you enslave yourself to it. When you make approval, the goal, you end up bending your actions, your beliefs, your values to fit what the crowd wants. You start caring more about, does this get me likes than, is this right? Epictetus warned us centuries ago. If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. In other words, don't let the possibility of looking silly hold you back from doing what you know is important. When your compass is external approval, you're at the mercy of every shifting preference, every trend, every viral craze. Think about how this plays out today. We scroll endlessly through social media feeds, measuring our self-worth by the thumbs up icon next to a photo. We tailor our opinions to match the loudest voices, hoping to fit in. Underneath that, there's a voice whispering, "You're not enough unless others say you are." That voice corrodes your confidence because as soon as you stop performing for an audience, they stop paying attention. And when the applause dies, you're left with nothing. You might say, but I need connection. I want people to like me. Of course, no one wants to live in isolation. But there's a critical difference between genuine camaraderie built on mutual respect and shared values and pandering to an unseen crowd. True freedom arises when you behave according to principles, not popularity. The man who values integrity over popularity is unpredictable. He cannot be controlled by praise or criticism. He speaks his truth even when it seems foolish. He acts according to what he believes is right, not what will score him points. So how do you evade this trap? Start by being brutally honest with yourself. Am I doing this because I truly believe in it, or am I chasing the applause? Next, practice small acts of principled discomfort. Say the honest answer even if it ruffles feathers. Post something vulnerable even if you risk a few scathing comments. When you find yourself crafting your words to fit a perceived audience, stop. Ask, would I be comfortable saying this if no one voted like? And would I still do this if I weren't praised? If the answer is no, then you know you're hooked on applause. Break that addiction by deliberately choosing authenticity over acceptance. Finally, remind yourself daily of Epictetus's guidance. Be content to be thought foolish. Embrace the possibility of quiet solitude instead of the roar of the crowd. This does not mean abandoning relationships or shunning feedback. It means anchoring your self-worth in your own integrity rather than in external validation. Over time, you'll develop what the Stoics called ataraxia, a state of inner tranquility that cannot be shaken by applause or boos. 2. The place where gossip reigns. Next is the breeding ground of gossip. Those rooms, chats, group texts where people meet to swap juicy tidbits about others. Guess what she did? Did you hear what he said? These conversations seem harmless, just idle chatter, right? But make no mistake, gossip is the currency of the spiritually bankrupt. When you linger in its company, you start feeding off other people's failures, traumas, and mistakes. You may not even speak the words aloud. You listen, you nod, you occasionally chime in. But by listening, you're tacitly agreeing, consuming that negativity, and letting it infect your spirit. Seneca wrote, "Associate with those who will make a better man of you. Welcome those whom you yourself can improve." When you sit in rooms or virtual groups where people passively tear others down, you're accepting weakness as your companion. Every remark you hear, every snarky joke you lap up pulls you further into a collective cage of judgment. You start viewing the world as a stage for ridicule instead of a place for mutual growth. Eventually your heart hardens, empathy erodes, suspicion takes root. You might protest, but I'm not the one spreading rumors. I'm just there. It's true that staying silent might feel safer than risking social friction, yet silence in the face of cruelty or character assassination is complicit. Even if you don't add fuel to the fire, you're fanning it by providing an audience. Over time, the people doing the gossiping infer your tacit agreement. He didn't defend her, he must believe we're right. And that drift toward toxic culture will change you, turning you blind to kindness, eager for the next scandal. How can you avoid this trap? First, guard your ears and your presence. If a conversation smells of gossip, don't just stay quiet. Remove yourself, excuse yourself politely, or deflect with a neutral response. I'm not comfortable talking about this. Over time, people learn that you do not feed their need for juicy gossip. Some may complain, you're no fun. Fine. You'd rather be no fun than morally bankrupt. Second, cultivate relationships with people who elevate rather than extinguish. Seek the company of those who talk about ideas, not people. Find groups whose very purpose is to uplift, learn, and grow. As Marcus Aurelius advised, choose your companions carefully, for you become the average of the people you spend the most time with. If your friends are gossip addicts, you'll become one too, even if you think you're immune. Lastly, if you do overhear gossip, practice redirecting the conversation. Ask a question about facts rather than rumors, or shift the discussion towards solutions. Instead of talking about what she did, let's think how we can help if she's going through a tough time. Over time, this blueprint of behavior will deter the spread of gossip in your circles. They'll think twice. If no one's interested in gossip, why bother? Remember, the Stoics held silence in high esteem. They believed that unnecessary words pollute the spirit and distract from virtue. So when you're tempted to linger in a gossip-infested gathering, recall, Seneca and Marcus Aurelius' true friendship is built on mutual respect and edification, not backstabbing and mockery. Transition and preview of what's next. We've covered the first two places, the insidious worlds of seeking validation and indulging in gossip. Both prey on your need for social acceptance, corrode your confidence, and erode your moral backbone. In part 2, we'll dive into two more traps lurking in your mind: the relentless prison of unforgiveness and the toxic realm of constant comparison. These inner places can turn your own mind into your worst enemy. We'll explore how to escape those mental cages and preserve your inner peace. But for now, reflect on the first two places. Have you ever found yourself performing for an invisible crowd, posting, speaking, or acting, just to get that dopamine hit of approval? Maybe you've lingered in conversations that revolved around tearing others down. If so, begin taking small steps today. Deliberately choose integrity over applause and refuse to be part of a gossip circle. Train yourself to prefer truth over slander, authenticity over popularity, and substance over idle chatter. When you're ready to continue, hit next or type continue, and we'll explore the final three places you can't afford to set foot in because they threaten your character more than any external enemy ever could. 3. The place inside your mind that never forgives. The third place isn't found in any neighborhood or on any GPS. It's in the dark corners of your own mind. It's the prison of unforgiveness, the constant replaying of an injury or betrayal that someone once inflicted on you. You nurse that wound, replay it like a movie on loop. You sift through every detail, every if only, every how could they, and each replay tightens the chains binding your spirit. Some wounds are real, some betrayals cut deep. If someone stole from you, deceived you, or spoke ill of you, there's raw hurt that deserves time and attention. But at some point, if you keep turning that knife, reliving that pain, you effectively hand your life over to the very person or event that harmed you. Marcus Aurelius put it simply, the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. In other words, when you choose to be consumed by outrage, you become like the person you despise, selfish, irrational, unhinged. To hold a grudge is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. The toxin stays within you. Your mind becomes a battlefield where anger, bitterness, and resentment wage war against peace, joy, and gratitude. Every morning you wake up, you carry that burden. Every night you go to sleep, you replay the scene hoping for a different ending, but finding none. Your heart grows calloused. Your empathy shrinks. Your ability to trust even in new people wanes. You might say, but they deserve to be reminded of what they did. Perhaps. But you have a choice. You can remind yourself endlessly or you can let it go. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or condoning what happened. It means refusing to let that wrong become part of your identity. You don't forgive because they deserve it. You forgive because you refuse to let their poison become your defining story. How do you escape this mental prison? First, acknowledge the damage. Admit to yourself how deeply you were hurt. Journal about it. Name the emotions, anger, shame, betrayal. But don't stop there. Ask yourself, what good comes from holding on? What does that grudge cost you? Time, peace, potential relationships, mental energy. Once you pinpoint the cost, once you see the ledger of losses, you'll realize the greater crime is what you're doing to yourself. Next, put the grudge on trial. Imagine a courtroom in your mind. You are both prosecutor and judge, but you must also play defense. Examine the evidence. Is your narrative complete? Are you exaggerating their offense? Are you omitting any mitigating factors, stress, ignorance, or circumstances that explain their behavior? Often we latch onto a version of events that's colored by our pain. Reality might be more nuanced. By scrutinizing the facts, you regain perspective and weaken the grudge. Then choose a symbolic act of release. Write a letter to the person who hurt you detailing every wound, every sorrow. Pour out your rage on that paper without holding back. Then burn it. Feel the flames consume the words. Watch the ashes scatter to the wind. You might cry. That's good. Let it out. When the smoke clears, say out loud, I will not let you control me anymore. This ritual isn't about them. It's about you reclaiming your authority over your mind. Finally, replace the bitterness with purpose. Channel the energy you used to expend on replaying the injury into something constructive. Volunteer, learn a new skill, mentor someone younger. As you build a positive legacy, the old wound loses its grip. You won't forget what happened, but you no longer carry its weight. Remember Marcus Aurelius. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. When you refuse to forgive, you give away that power. When you forgive, you seize it back. Or the place where you constantly compare yourself to others. The fourth place is a hall of mirrors, each shard reflecting someone else's curated highlight reel, never the full picture. You scroll through your phone, witnessing the sleek posts of people who seem more successful, more attractive, more content than you. You measure your worth against their best moments, filtered, edited, and illusionary. This place lives in your pocket, in your mind, in every social feed. It's the killer of joy, the thief of self-worth. Comparison feels natural. Evolution wired us to look at others, to size them up, to determine friend or foe, to understand social standing. But comparison becomes toxic when it extends beyond survival instinct and bleeds into your identity. You start thinking, if only I earned as much as he does, if only I looked that fit, if only my career was as impressive, then I'd be happy. So you chase promotions, endorsements, likes, but your soul remains restless because the measurement standard is always moving. The cruel irony, you're not competing in the real contest. You're competing in a fantasy tournament where every opponent has infinite resources to stage their best. Comparisons steal your joy because they distract you from what you can control: your own effort, your own progress, your own principles. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, look within. Within is the fountain of good, and it will ever bubble up if you will ever dig. Real strength and contentment bubble from within, not from measuring up to someone's carefully curated persona. How do you escape this mirror maze? Start by recognizing that comparison is a choice. When you catch yourself scrolling and feeling small, pause. Ask, whose story am I comparing to? Does this really reflect their whole life? What would happen if I looked away? In that pause, reclaim your agency. Turn off notifications, set app limits, unfollow accounts that trigger envy, and follow people who inspire growth instead of insecurity. Next, cultivate gratitude. Every day, list 3 things in your life you're genuinely grateful for: health, relationships, opportunities, personal achievements. Spend a minute reflecting on each. Gratitude shifts your focus from what you lack to what you have. When you appreciate your journey flaws, and all, you weaken the impulse to look sideways for worth. Then focus on process over outcome. Whether it's fitness, art, a career, measure yourself by your own benchmarks, not someone else's. Track how you felt when you ran an extra mile or finished a project. Journal your incremental improvements. Celebrate consistency, doing the small things over and over. When your identity anchors in the discipline of showing up rather than the applause of success, you become unshakable. Also remember that people tend to share success, not struggle. Behind every glossy post is frustration, doubt, sleepless nights. When you see someone's perfect output, remind yourself you haven't seen their messy input. You cannot compare your inside to someone else's highlight. Finally, learn to wish genuine well for others. When envy rises, replace it with a sincere, may they continue to do well. This practice of well-wishing is an antidote to jealousy. It softens your heart and reminds you that success isn't finite. Someone else's win doesn't cost you anything. As you internalize this shift, you'll see that your comparison habit shrinks. You'll develop a quiet contentment that fueled it from within, a sense that you're enough and your path is your own. Transition and preview of what's next. We've explored two more treacherous places: the unforgiving prison of grudges and the deceptive hall of comparisons. Both reside within your own mind and can sabotage your character faster than any external enemy. In part 3, we'll tackle the final place, the relentless need to prove yourself. This last trap forces you to trade your inner conviction for a facade of competence, a facade that ultimately hollows you out. Before moving on, look back at sections 3 and 4. Do you catch yourself replaying a past hurt? Do you scroll endlessly, feeling inadequate compared to curated images of others? If so, take immediate action. Begin the forgiveness ritual. Set boundaries on social media. Practice gratitude, and refocus on your own growth. By addressing these inner traps, you reclaim your mind and guard yourself against turning into a hollow shell haunted by regrets and envy. When you're ready for the final installment, just hit next or type continue, and we'll dismantle the last stronghold, the place where you exhaust yourself trying to prove your worth rather than living it. 5. The place where you're always trying to prove yourself. Here it is, the final, perhaps most insidious of the 5 spiritually toxic places. It's the arena where you feel compelled to demonstrate your worth, to showcase your talents, to justify your existence through endless performance. You might recognize it as that restless drive to clinch every high-paying contract, to field every conversation, like a debate to flex on social media, or to always have the perfect comeback. It shows up as a high-paying job you despise, because it elevates your status, or a social circle where you can't relax unless you're constantly proving you belong. In this place, your worth is conditional, only real if you keep scoring points, hitting KPIs, or getting applause. Every handshake, every pitch, every message carries the silent subtext: look at me. See how capable I am. Admire me. The moment you stop proving your value, you fear you'll vanish from relevance. So instead of living with calm confidence, you operate from a pressure cooker mentality, perpetually chasing someone else's measure of success. Epictetus, ever so piercing, said it plainly: if you seek the admiration of others, you have made yourself their slave. Think about that for a second. The desire for admiration means you're trading your freedom for a seat on the approval train. Each compliment becomes a brief burst of fuel to keep you moving. I need that next compliment to feel validated. Lose that applause and you're left stranded, scrambling like a marionette whose strings have been cut. Imagine someone we'll call John. John works at a corporate law firm. He's on track to make partner, dragging himself through 60-hour work weeks, skipping vacations, and sharpening his arguments at every opportunity. Why? Because when he lands high-profile cases, the partner's praise feels like oxygen. Colleagues treat him with respect, another hit of that "I'm special" high. But every night, John goes home exhausted, living for the next email notification that says "great job." He's forgetting why he became a lawyer in the first place. He only remembers that momentary rush of external validation. That's the trap he's become addicted to, proving he is worthy, but that worth is fleeting. When he finally makes partner, the praise will fade. There's always another hurdle. So he'll keep running on the hamster wheel, never pausing to consider if he's actually fulfilled. Or consider Sarah, a social media influencer whose entire identity orbits around sponsorships, followers, and verified badges. Even when she's off camera, she's thinking about her next post, her next pitch, her next metric to boost. When the numbers drop, she spirals, questioning her talent, her value, her beauty. Sarah isn't living. She's performing a script written by an algorithm. In essence, she's not free. As soon as the crowd's roar turns into a whisper, her foundation crumbles. That's another version of the same trap. So how do you escape this arena of constant self-justification? First, you must distinguish between competence and performance. Competence is your real internal capability, your skill set, your integrity, your ability to do good work for its own sake. Performance is the external display, what you share, showcase, or brag about. Competence doesn't need an audience. It is a private affair of continuous improvement, waking up early, reading, practicing a craft, honing your talents in solitude. Performance demands an audience. It demands likes, trophies, applause. Ask yourself, which of my actions are driven by a genuine desire to grow, and which are driven by a fear that I'll be judged unworthy if I'm not performing? If you can't answer that honestly, perform an experiment. For 1 week, commit to doing 5 minutes of something every morning purely for yourself, writing in a journal, reading a philosophy text, practicing a guitar riff without telling a soul. No social media post, no screenshots. Just practice for the sake of practice. Notice how it feels. If you find yourself itching to share, that's a red flag you're hooked on performance. Keep practicing until you can enjoy the solitude of competence, until you can look in the mirror and say, I did this for me. I don't need your validation. Second, practice what I call disappearing into the work. When you immerse yourself in a task, writing an essay, building a model, helping someone in need, there's a moment when your sense of self dissolves and you exist purely in the act. This flow state is the antidote to perpetual self-justification. In flow, you're not thinking about how will people see this. You're focused on every word, every brushstroke, every detail. You create a boundary around your work. The only audience that matters is the craft itself. To make that transition, start small. The next time you have a project, a spreadsheet to build a presentation, to design a book to write, commit to working on it in a public place, a cafe, a library, but without your phone, without signaling to anyone that you want them to notice. Just put your head down and work. When someone glances over, don't change your posture. Don't pretend to check a notification. Remain fully engaged. Over time, you rewire your brain to derive satisfaction from the act rather than the recognition. Third, get comfortable with silence and solitude. If you're always trying to prove yourself, you avoid quiet corners, you dread being alone with your thoughts. Silence is the mirror where you confront your insecurities. Why do I need to prove myself here? What's the worst that can happen if I'm just me? Try scheduling a weekly 30-minute block where you have no distractions, no phone, no music, no conversation. Sit in a chair with a timer ticking. Notice your breathing. Observe the thoughts that arise. When the compulsion to demonstrate worth bubbles up, just observe it. Let it pass. Over weeks, you'll find that the urge weakens. You'll build a sanctuary, a place where you are enough simply because you exist. Finally, internalize the Stoic truth. Your value isn't conditional on other people's appraisal. It's rooted in your character. Virtue for Stoics is the only true good. If you act with courage, justice, wisdom, and self-control, you're living rightly no matter if the world notices. Marcus Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." He's telling you, stop performing virtues as a show. Cultivate them quietly, consistently, in every unseen moment. Be the person who, when confronted with temptation, chooses integrity, even if no one applauds. That's what real worth is, a silent fortress of character that thrives in obscurity. Conclusion. Building a fortress of character. We've now journeyed through all 5 of these perilous places. The validation arena, where every action begs for applause, eroding your authenticity. The gossip circle, where you sit quietly listening to character assassination, letting cruelty reshape your soul. The prison of unforgiveness, where you replay past injuries, trading your present peace for a counterfeit sense of justice. The hall of comparison, where every scroll feeds envy, drowning your gratitude and distracting you from your own path. The proving ground, where you constantly perform, never resting in the assurance of your own competence. Each of these places threatens to hollow you out. They might not break your bones, but they can crack your spirit more thoroughly than any blow. The good news is that none of these places need to be permanent addresses. You might wander into them occasionally. After all, temptation is human, but by naming them, seeing them for what they are, and following the Stoic strategies we've outlined, you can choose to exit those traps and reclaim your freedom. Here are some practical steps to keep you from backsliding. Daily reflection. Set aside 2 minutes each evening to review your day. Ask, did I act for genuine reasons or was I seeking approval? Did I indulge in gossip? Did I replay any grudges? Did I compare myself to someone else? Did I feel compelled to prove my worth? Honesty in these questions helps you course correct. Stoic anchors. Keep a few Stoic quotes visible on a note stuck to your mirror or pinned to your desktop. Epictetus. If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Seneca. Associate with those who will make a better man of you. Marcus Aurelius. The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. Marcus Aurelius. Look within. Within is the fountain of good. Epictetus. If you seek the admiration of others, you have made yourself their slave. Let these words anchor your mindset when temptation to stray arises. Accountability partner. Find someone who shares your commitment to character growth. Perhaps a friend or colleague who's also wrestling with similar challenges. Once a week, talk about a specific place you visited. Discuss how you felt, what triggered you, and what you learned. The act of articulating your struggle reinforces accountability and diminishes shame. Cultivate positive spaces. Proactively fill your life with environments that foster virtue. Surround yourself with people who prioritize integrity over popularity, substance over scandal, growth over comfort. Join study groups, volunteer organizations, athletic clubs, or creative circles where the shared ethos is improvement, both personal and communal. Mindful consumption. Be selective about what you feed your mind. Avoid media that glorifies envy, sensationalism, or constant performance. Instead, read philosophical texts, listen to meaningful podcasts, watch documentaries about ordinary people doing extraordinary things quietly. Your mental diet shapes your worldview. If your inputs glorify character over charisma, you'll be less tempted to chase the latter. Above all, remember that freedom is an inside job. You cannot control what the world thinks of you, but you can control how you treat yourself. When you remove your foot from the accelerator of seeking validation, you start to move at your own pace. When you step away from the gossip circle, you retain your empathy and compassion. When you forgive, you reclaim your power. When you stop comparing, you anchor yourself in gratitude. When you cease proving, you rest in competence. It's okay if you stumble. We all do. The measure of a strong character isn't perfect behavior, but the willingness to stand up each time you fall, dust off the residue of that toxic place, and keep walking forward. In the end, these 5 places are false promises. They offer comfort, acceptance, and security, but only to borrow your soul until they devour it. The true sanctuary is a life lived with integrity, sustained by your own principles and rooted in inner peace. So guard your mind. Build that fortress of character brick by brick. Refuse the applause that costs you your authenticity. Walk away from gossip's lure. Release the grudges weighing you down. Stay focused on your own path, not the shifting reflections in other people's lenses. And finally, trust that when you live by virtue, courage, wisdom, justice, self-control, you are enough exactly as you are. Now go forth, be solid, be silent, be sovereign. The world may never notice, but your soul will know, and that is all the applause you truly need.